Hi, this is Ben. Ben Gillette, Ben and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me, he does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you to In Time. Welcome you all to In Time with Nick. Love you all. Peace. Go get him, Nick.
Photo of you in my mind, on the table under lights. There's no one here but you and I. This neon town is yours and mine. And I said, hey, 𝐒𝐚𝐥𝐿. Stayed up through the days and nights, lay and we watched the world get light. Hey, 𝐒𝐚𝐥𝐿. Sunlight, freedom in your eyes. Please don't leave now.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to After Dark. You're not going crazy. Two really interesting things have happened. We decided to do a 4th of July stream, and we're on time for it. So, this is very impromptu. I don't know. I think a lot of people wanted to blow off some steam. Now, this is After Dark, but the lines are actually closed. I figured I wanted to chat and decompress a little bit myself first, and if anybody wants in, let me know, and I'll make sure the room opens. Actually, the room is open. I'm in it, so if somebody comes in, let's see, it's live.intimeshow.com. I'll see you there. But right now, I think I just wanted to chat, just you and I, solipsist to solipsist. So hope everyone's doing well. It's odd. It's this country's birthday, and more divided than at any time since the Civil War. It's and it was odd. I honestly I forgot to I forgot I knew there was something. My brain is very much in neutral. The fog is back, whether it's COVID or something else, I don't know. I've been slamming energy drinks again, and that does also do it. So it could be, may not be one or the other, but for my, I'm normal. Whoa, squirrel. That's like normal for me, and now it's even more. If you've been paying attention the last couple of shows, I've lost my train of thought mid-class. Yeah. Anyways, I those jokes aren't as funny as I think they are. I know, but I had done I wanted to link. I'll see if I get a moment. I may link it into the description. An article I had written on how Trump would attempt to essentially take over the United States. And I wrote this right after he won the primaries. And it's very scary how much of it is what he actually did. And it's, I try not to be too alarmist, but, we've had a lot of shows talking about having a civil war in the United States, and it in part seems almost laughable and impossible. The United States feels, for me, almost like a foregone conclusion, a manifest destiny, as it were. So it's weird to think about, but it doesn't take a lot of reading of history to realize that these things really do happen with reasonable frequency. We've seen it and reported on it happening in other countries. There's no reason to expect the United States is immune or invulnerable. I have spoken on more than one occasion of my experiences as a political operative, which was one of the best times of my life, and I really wanted to do it professionally for, just like have that be a career. But the amount of cynicism involved in it, there was no way. I came close, but no way to bridge a base level of cynicism required to function that I couldn't meet in any meaningful way. So didn't do it. But I remember thinking that what was sort of ending this republic was money coming in from PACs and officially the ability to legally bribe our legislators. And I still think that probably is fundamentally in some ways the problem, but the reason we can't fix it, there's a number of reasons we can't fix it, but one of the things that I had said, in fact, I was on Maudi's stream earlier today, one of the reasons I think that we can't fix it is because we are a two-party country, and I don't think it's possible for us to have more than two parties. I think when you have a winner-take-all system, which we don't have in Congress, but we do have in the executive branch, when you have that, you can start with any number of parties you want to, but over time, given enough time, it will always resolve to two parties. And having a parliamentary system isn't, free of problems, as people have pointed out, and I'm aware it's not perfect, but the problem is when you have only two parties, it A, encourages brinksmanship, and B, ultimately I was going to say encourages brinksmanship in another way. It's winner take all, and I don't think you can have a stable democracy with only two parties. I don't think it can be done. And because now, well, gee, if we don't have winner take all in Congress, wouldn't that balance it out? No, because the problem is we do have winner take all in the executive branch, and the parties that when you're campaigning for the executive branch, adding a campaign for Congress or multiple campaigns for Congress makes a lot of sense. Obama had coattails for a reason, and Obama and those riding those coattails were very aware of it. Getting people to vote down ticket was a genuine goal and strategy. Now, if you're just trying to get an independent into Congress, it's doable, but it's tough because you're fighting the entire campaign machine that's been established from either the Republicans or from the Democrats. And the reason they keep that machine intact and the reason that machine keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger is because of the way the presidency is set up, and they've rolled Congress into it. So it ends up being a two-party system, and I think where we are now is an inevitability of that. And if there are many faults in the Constitution, and it's always disheartening to hear people talk about the Constitution as being perfect. There are obviously many faults in it. The obvious and easy go-to is slavery, but it's certainly by no means the only one. And, the founding fathers were extraordinarily intelligent men. I don't think we should, let's not pretend that it wasn't an extraordinary and unlikely gathering of intellectuals and genuine powerhouses. But they were just men, and there were compromises, and compromise today is a dirty word, but in the Constitution, every paragraph, every sentence, every point of punctuation, every word was a compromise. So, and you can see it, and that is some of the imperfection of the document, and why I was always a big fan of Obama, always referencing it, or the United States trying to become a more perfect union. And that document alone isn't sufficient, but maybe with modifications and so on and so forth. I guess that was the deal. That was the intent. It's become so hard to do, and I think it's become hard to do because it's a two-party system. There's no point in, for most people, learning the nuance of the positions of Democrats or Republicans. You're either going to be a Democrat or Republican if you want to be heard. That's it. Ask Bernie Sanders. So most of us will fall into one camp and stay there basically all of our lives. We're not the ones that they're competing for. And the reason is because it really is a binary choice. And most of us have a position or two that precludes us from, from being on the other side. Social issues, economic issues, whatever they may be. So it means that I don't know. I'd like to see somebody do a study of parliamentary systems and figure out. I think most of them right now, people are genuinely more informed in parliamentary systems. But whether that's just because they have a better education than the United States or because the system lends itself toward that is anyone's guess. I think, again, nothing ever happens for just one reason. So I suspect in part it's because they have a better education system than us. But I think, again, a two-party system leads to disengagement. It's hard to be engaged when it's going to be the same thing all the time. Now, even in parliamentary systems, usually there's a couple of dominant parties and the rest are minor. But when the election's close, all of a sudden those minor players have a lot of power. And it means that they have to be listened to. How many people listen to the log cabin Republicans? If you're gay, it is extremely hard to justify being a Republican. It'd be nice if there were other options. And because there aren't other options, the Democrats know you're probably not going to be a Republican. So what do they really have to do? What have you done for me lately? They don't have to do all that much. Where are you going to go, realistically? So the reason we can't solve campaign finance reform is because there's no will to do it. There's no will to do it because there's no where you going to go if your congressmen or senators don't vote the way you want to. The alternative is the opposing party, the people that, for whatever reason, you absolutely don't want to be involved with. I mean, I suppose there's an argument to be made, and this is true, that the other alternative is you may not vote. And so really it's a movie. Office Space, and in a moment of truth and an epiphany, where one of the workers is talking to his boss, says, and they're saying, why aren't you just let's get all the cards on the table? Why aren't you motivated? Why aren't you working harder? Like, well, because I don't get any benefit from it. I don't get any extra money if I work harder. I don't have profit sharing or anything like that. So really the only motive I have at work is to not get hassled and to, stand by one. Yeah, to not get hassled and to not get fired. So that's the bar. Just don't get fired. Well, the bar for most Republicans and conservatives is don't get people to not vote. So, just try to find a way to make sure that they go to the polls. That's what it's become about. So all of a sudden, it's not so much about the money. It's about the fact that we're a two-party system. And if we don't fix that, I think there's a distinct time limit. I think that may be the original sin of the Constitution, even more than slavery is. Is actually having I was going to say binary choice. A winner take all for the presidency. And actually, it really wasn't. For most of you know this, which is it actually wasn't. The vice president was whoever came in second place. So it wasn't quite winner take all. And it may be that they found that sufficient and said, well, okay, so there is still a prize for second place. You get to be vice president. But it turned out that was a really stupid idea because, first of all, you now have a president and a vice president who hate each other. And second of all, you've given a lot of incentive for people who are fans of the opposing party to take out the president. And I mean, there's always some motivation. But now, if your guy's going to come in place, one reason, people aren't trying to assassinate presidents more often in this country is because what are you going to do? You're going to replace them with their vice president, who's usually not all that much better. If the vice president turns out to be your guy. So I think it was probably wise to say vice president and president with the same ticket. But now it's a winner take all. And I think that's the death of a country. Is that where we are now? Well, as I had said earlier, I made a lot of predictions about Trump. I made them right after he won. And again, at some point, I'll find him. The website I had him on went down, but I think it's back up. I hope it's back up. We'll see. But, and most of those panned out within a pretty good degree of accuracy. And I found myself talking with Commander McMillan, who has forgotten more about war than everybody listening to this combined will ever know. And, saying he doesn't see a way out of some kind of civil war in this country. And in fact, I had noted that he said the first civil war, which means in his mind, there's already a second. And he has said as much, that it's already started. It's just a cold civil war. And it's funny. I've been all over Twitter saying these things and sort of gauging people's response. And a lot of them are, well, it's alarmist, or, it's, hey, it's a great way to get subs and views, right? Because, you run around saying, oh my God, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. So you always have to be a little careful when somebody on social media starts saying these things. But on the flip side, it's really hard for me to reach any other conclusion. And I usually, in terms of the circles of people that I hang out with who are going over this information, I'm usually the last one on board with it because I have some responsibility to be as accurate as possible. So we're looking at, and I like the way Commander McMillan put it. There's no off ramp that he can see, and been sort of spitballing scenarios, but there isn't any scenario that I see for us to get out of this. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to dial it back. I have no doubt that it's revenge. I remember when the Obamacare passed, and one of the things that really concerned me was how smug people were about it. And they stopped explaining it. They stopped talking about it. They're just like, no, we're passing it, despite the objection of conservatives because they're too stupid to understand why it's good for them. We're just going to do what's good for you and, shut up and take it. And that breeds resentment. Oh, does that breed resentment? And you're seeing that now. We're seeing that when Trump was elected. I take some objection to this idea that it's our fault, it's liberals' fault that he got, elected, that it was this pendulum swing. I have said it before, I've said it again. I think many more conservatives are aware of just how dangerous Trump was, but they didn't care. Why? Because he pissed off the liberals. So it wasn't a swing in the pendulum. It was, pushing the pendulum back the other way and adding a lot of momentum to it. And the liberals will do the same thing. Of course we will. Because we're seeing what took, in some cases, over 100 years, because we are essentially going back to Dred Scott. But at a minimum, we're seeing 50 years of very, very hard work, fighting tooth and nail, getting undone in weeks. Oh, well, and it was funny because I had a conservative on Twitter who sat there and said, well, it's really their fault because this is what happens when you act like an ass and, do all these things, which liberals have been doing, absolutely. But I'm sitting there going, oh, okay. So when liberals up the ante more and push back even harder, it's going to be your fault? Somehow the conservative didn't seem to think so. So it'll be nice to see de-escalation on all sides. I don't think the conservatives are going to do that, especially not while they're winning. And I don't think the liberals are going to do that. So where does this go? The fact is, there are a number of laws that I think this Supreme Court is interested in passing, including banning abortion. I believe this court is interested in that. I believe this court is going to take a stab at it. If they do that, I don't think many of the northern states will recognize that. And I remember we had on In Time a discussion when many of the states were ignoring federal bans on marijuana. And that concerned me. I thought it was fascinating. It was interesting. Supremacy. They can't do that. And they were. But every time you do something like that, what happens? Well, it gets easier the next time somebody says we want to ignore the federal government. Well, maybe we don't have much of a choice to ignore the federal government if they start absolutely taking away people's rights. But having said that, that's when the federal government starts to crumble. If liberals say, well, we're not going to recognize the authority of the federal government to ban abortion, which, again, they haven't done yet, but I think it's on the table. In fact, I think it's the goal. If we say, well, gee, we don't recognize their authority to do that, well, conservatives are going to say, well, gee, why should we recognize their authority in any matters? And there are plenty of matters that are going to stop paying taxes. Why? Well, because taxes are going to social welfare programs that they don't believe in, and the government spends too much, and it's tax spend liberals, and so why should they spend money and give money to the federal government if when they get laws that they like passed, or when they get Supreme Court decisions that they like, including these most recent ones, the left just ignores them. If the North gets to ignore states, what's good for the goose? So I'd like to see, if anyone's got an idea how that's not going to happen, I'd like to see what it is. Not a huge fan of Roberts, but Roberts is at least sane. And he has to be, he's an incrementalist, and he thinks these things should be done slowly. Well, the rest of the court is telling him to fuck off. So, yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of other things as we talk about that, but gas prices are going up. I think inflation is going to get much worse. What's happening in Ukraine is bad, but it's going to get worse if Putin feels like he can get away with it. I think history is reasonably clear on that, and it's frustrating when, I won't get into that, but so everybody's on edge. I'm on edge. And it gets kind of a feedback loop because the people that you bump into or meet in life, they're all stressed out. There isn't a woman in my life, not one anywhere, that isn't freaking out right now. Well, many of my female friends are my support system if I start to feel stressed, and I'm theirs, but I'm trying to be there for them. I'm trying to do a show, and if I get stressed out, well, it's not as many people as I can go to because everybody's dealing with their own problems, and so the rising tide, all the boats go up and everybody's kind of stressed. So here we are, after dark, impromptu, shooting the shit a little bit and trying to blow off steam. How? By talking about our problems. There's an idea. So I'm going to check the live chat because I see it's been moving, but I get if I check it while I'm talking, I don't come back. I just completely lose it. Then I had one or two interesting ideas of things we could talk about, and I think if people want to join in a little bit, it's a little easier. I'm tired. I think everybody's tired, and even though it's an after dark, it's a little easier right now if I don't have to host and just chat. So apologies for those who are looking all to just come in right now, but. Well, let me see what's going on with the live chat, see if anyone's got any questions or what people are talking about. Let me get all caught up here. Michael's here. Thank you. Good to see you. So is Sinister. Humanist Swede. Thank you so much for coming. Good to see you. Native Atheist. A lot of people. So Doc Fearsom's here. All right. Thank you, guys. Proportional representation. Every party getting over 40% of the vote gets into our parliament. Yeah, in the U.S., we actually have something kind of similar, which is anybody who gets over 3% of the vote is an official party. We officially only have two parties. A third party can run. Kanye West ran as a member of the Birthday Party. It should have been reasonably clear that civilization was ending when Kanye West notifies the human race that he's running for president of the United States by photoshopping himself into Mount Rushmore and saying he's running as the Birthday Party candidate. I can't make this shit. If I tried to publish a book that said that, it would be laughed out of the... dear Lord. So, if any, anybody can run as any party, but in terms of how many official parties we have, which means they're on the ballot, they don't have to get the signatures to get on the ballot. They're on the ballot every year. They qualify for matching funds in areas where there's public funding. I think public funding actually, if I recall, exists at the federal level. Most of them decline it because it also limits how much they can spend, but they get the money for free. At any rate, all of that happens to a third party if they get 3%. However, it's 3% of the electoral college. And as hard as it is to get 3% of the vote, I think Ross Perot nearly did it. I think a few others came reasonably close. I forget who was the most recent close one. It doesn't matter because they didn't get any electoral delegates. So, 3% of the electoral college is a challenge. It really means you have to get 100% of a, well, not 100%. You have to win a state. You have to win a state, which means you have to get 50% of the vote in that state. That's very different than getting 3% of the vote nationwide. Getting 3% of the vote nationwide is tough enough. Try getting 50% of the vote in one state. If you don't do that, you can't have a third party. So we're not going to have a third party. So, yeah, don't get me started on the Electoral College. To be honest, I think DeSantis would be worse than Trump. That's from a humanist Swede. That's a bold claim. That's a bold claim. I don't know enough about DeSantis, but yeah, that's a bold statement. GER is here. IQ just went down. Listen, I'd be happy to give GER a hard time, and but GER's busy going after Titan, and I encourage that, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Let's see. In Sweden, we've got one-party government, but they need support from 2 or 3. Yep, exactly. That's UK is roughly the same. It's a parliamentary system. Well, and the parties have to cooperate, and that gives power to people with different ideas. That doesn't happen in the presidency. The executive branch is run by one party, period, end of discussion, and they can act unilaterally. Now, there is presumably the balance of separation of powers and checks and balances, so you've got the other branches of government, but what if one of them is dominated by one side or the other? But the Congress does show what some of the downsides of this are, but it shows some of the upsides too, because Congress isn't quite winner take all, and whoever comes in second place still has enough power that if they can pull a couple senators, off of something, they have influence over bills. So it's not this. It doesn't. Congress does not allow for unilateral action in the same way that you get in the executive branch. So the executive branch ends up being everything on one level because you can influence so much with it, and there isn't much veto power for 4 years once the president comes in. So let's see. Gas prices are currently on a downward trend. That's sinister porpoise. Nice to hear. I've been cowering under the dash in my car every time I try to go in. I was like, okay, I'm terrified. So I don't know what the prices are. Yep. Okay. I'm running in 2024 under the more silly party. The other two are so silly. There you go. Yeah, I don't see GER. GER was here earlier, but I think GER just came in to give Titan a hard time and bail. So, all right. So, what's going on? So everybody's stressed. I'm stressed. Mowdy, good friend of mine, good friend of the show, comes on and guest hosts every now and then. Love having him around. But, he was talking a bit about how he had felt like, and he said this morning, he was on a stream, I guess he felt that he didn't like his response to somebody. I think he felt it was condescending and inappropriate. And I'm always of a mixed feeling of this. I used to be so much more, and I'm still the nice guy, right? But I used to be more so. And I think as I get in pain, I'm getting older. Get older, you start to have, and Titan's gonna sit there and he's gonna smack me up. He's like, I don't get to complain, but nerve damage and various other issues. So you get grumpy, and any number of other reasons, but stress too does it. And we're all under stress. And if you got a family right now and you're trying to see what kind of world your kids are gonna grow up in, it's a very stressful time. Just having kids is. So I think it was Zandring pointed out, if you look at the intro on it. No, not the intro. Sorry, the credits. When the credits roll tonight, take a look at me. And just 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, my hair was mostly black, beard mostly black. It's like, okay, in 3 years, how far has it come? But if it must be running for president. But I've said this before. That picture I've had since college. And a lot of people don't understand how and why what he did worked. And they don't understand how or why it was so powerful. And it's funny because the older I get, the more cynical I am, and the less I want to try to follow those values. And yet it's brutally effective. It's a combination of, I have this discussion with my daughters all the time. My father used to say you can either do something or get the credit for it, but you can't do both. When my daughters fight, sometimes I watch, sometimes I sell tickets. But when they argue with each other, if one of them turns out to be just dead right, and most of us have figured this out as adults. We've learned this. If you're right about something in an argument, you've got two choices. You can sit there and accept the win and walk away graciously and not give the other person a hard time. Or you can sit there and say, see, I was right. Well, yeah, they did see. You don't have to put a point on it, right? The best thing you can do is, everybody knows you're right, walk away, leave it alone. What they're going to do is they're going to process it, and hopefully they're going to become better people. But the second you rub their face in it, the second you sit there and say, see, I was right, backfire effect. All of a sudden now, they're angry at you for being right because you're trying to take credit for it, because you're trying to, whether you deserve credit or not, doesn't really matter. This is just how people respond. So it's been my experience that the more often you're right, usually, the more you want to try to keep your mouth shut about it, because all it does is engender hostility. And if you're trying to move the needle in one direction or another, it's actually harder the more you point out how often you're right. And nobody likes those kinds of people. And then when they're right, you spend more time trying to figure out how you can prove they're wrong. Doesn't work. And I say that because, again, it's the line was, you can either do something or take the credit for it. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't want to take the credit for being superior. He didn't want to take the credit for pointing out that white people are terrible. He didn't want any of that. Just wanted to make things better. And he realized that part of doing that was genuinely seeing other people, whoever they were, as brothers, even those who would see him in jail, even whose minds could not be changed. He didn't care about rubbing their noses in it. He didn't care about being superior. And he talked a lot about, I was going to say righteous indignation. No, that wasn't it. It was not moral outrage. Oh, dear Lord. I'll remember it, but it's kind of a moral outrage, but he used it in a different way than we do now. Righteous indignation. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure somebody will come up. Yeah, I'm right already. We're just walk away. Thanks, Doorknob Head. Doorknob Head being helpful as always. I don't remember. So this is what you get when stream at 12:30 in the morning. How many times have I, as an anti-theist, I do this all the time. It's like when I get a really good point, it trying to stop that part of you that says, nah, right? And that's what we're seeing with conservatives right now, is collectively, they're like, you see, you guys, you liberals, you think you're so smart and you thought you could get away with everything. Well, look what's happening to you now. What's that going to do? The conservatives have legit grievances. They really do. Think liberals are going to want to hear them right now? Maybe conservatives think that liberals, doesn't matter whether you want to hear them or not, we're going to force our agenda down your throat. Well, that's what they feel liberals did. And look where it got us. Oh, if a conservative wants to sit there and say they're better by any meaningful way, I got news for them. No. They've escalated. That's fine. We had escalated. So they're escalating again. We're going to escalate right back. Not the way to get real progress, but Jesus, the way to get real progress is slow and painful and just takes so much friggin' time. I had seen a clip of Martin Luther King Jr. and we did a show. We weren't able to air it, and It needs to. We got a script, we got a footage, and we did a show, Martin Luther King Jr. that was going to be released on the birthday, but pushed. One thing led to another. We still got it, but we haven't had a chance to bring it out yet. But there was a marvelous clip where somebody was asking him what he was thinking about the movement, and he said that he had lost a lot of his optimism and his naivety. Not that he could succeed; he still was as confident as ever that there'd be success, and he knew he was probably going to die. That was one of the most shocking things. As I was doing this research, I found a speech he gave. I think it was the night before he was assassinated. It was right as he arrived in I think it was Memphis. Gave a speech that night, and you could tell he knew that people were gunning for him, and the chances were on a long enough time scale he wasn't going to make it. And he talked about the mountaintop. He said, I may not get there with you, but he talked about the inevitability of the likelihood he wasn't going to make it. But when he was talking about, did he still believe? He absolutely believed, but what he realized was that he had been naive to think it would be as easy as he thought, and he never thought it was going to be easy. It was this huge, long process. It's healing, and building takes so much more energy, so much more effort, and by this point, everybody's exhausted. We're exhausted. Trump was fucking exhausting. And not for nothing, again, as I pointed out, liberals certainly have made their share of mistakes, and I understand why conservatives are pushing on the gas here. But, they betrayed their own values. Presumably, they believe in the rule of law, but the only qualification Trump had was that he pissed off liberals. So, Jenna is here. Jenna, good to see you. Very good to see you. And having actually met you, I can say that. I hope we get a chance to. We didn't get a chance. We got to hang out sometime. You guys are in town, or I'm near either of you. We'll all go out to dinner. You, Oz, and I. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we'll figure it out. At any rate, I think you get tired, and you get tired of fighting with everybody, and you get tired of people not listening to you, especially when you're right, which probably happens a lot less than you think, but happens. And being ignored when you're right, that grinds your gears. And then you say, I want there to be a civil war because I'm going to show conservatives where it's at. And I've looked at this. There are reasons the South, which is conservative, lost. And the conditions that led to their loss is more true today than it was then. It's not going to go well for them. But they have, it's like, we don't need facts. We believe. Okay. That's what they said the last time. So you do you, boo. But I don't want to see this so-called great experiment end, but we've talked, and I've said this, I think there is an original sin there that I don't see how we're going to get around. So what happens? Well, the U.S. breaks up. It's a scary and terrifying time. But with any luck, things end up better. And over time, they do. And maybe we don't have a civil war. Like I said, to hear somebody else say it, especially Macmillan, who knows his shit, I was unprepared for that. But on a long enough time scale, people of good character, people of faith, not in God, not in anything but the fact that there really is a process by which we make things better in the long arc of history. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc is long, but it bends towards justice, and it does. Today is still the best time to be alive. Least amount of violence any time in human history as a percentage of the population. There are countries where children starve to death. One every, 17 seconds? 14 seconds? But there's still less poverty as a percentage of the species than there's ever been. Birth rates not birth rates. Infant mortality is as low as it's ever been. And, having all of the luxuries of modern civilization, having all the free time that we have, which 200 years ago, nobody had free time like this. Nobody had free time like this. None of it means anything if you can't do something with it. Well, we got computers, we got movies, we got video games, and we forget how spectacular a time it is to live in. I am very nervous about where this country's headed, and I hope I'm wrong, despite the fact every now and then. And I have a couple of objections to Texas. I think people have picked up on that. I'm subtle. I'm very subtle. But I have some objections to Texas. I don't want to see them suffer. And I'd be okay saying, okay, not rubbing their noses in it if it meant that everybody could be better and everybody could do better. And it's hard to see where things are headed and hard to see it like checkmate on a chessboard 12 moves away. And it's like, if there's a way out of this, I don't know what it is. But I do have faith that good people will rise to the top as they've always done, and we will find a way to make the world better, however it works out. And the reason I have that faith isn't because it's blind faith. It's because it's what we've done for 100,000 years. It's what we've done. And I think we're going to keep doing it. So that is the message. I think it's one of cautious optimism, believe it or not, as much as the world genuinely is going to hell in a handbasket. It's cautious optimism, and there's reason for it. I'm going to check the live chat again. If anybody wants to come in, it's live.intimeshow.com. I don't have the phone number up, but if somebody wants to call in, let me know. I'll get the phone number up. Otherwise, any web browser will do it. You can come in on your phone, come in on just live.intimeshow.com, go there, and you can come in. So, yep, this was impromptu. So, what is this? Yep, thanks. I'm sure. Thanks. Love your support. Right, let's see. How is everybody? So I'm going to catch up with the live chat. Oh, everybody's loving on everybody. That is a delight to see. That's a delight to see. The U.S. needs to break up. Canada needs to invade and take over. Canada, I don't think Canada is going to invade. They're just going to apologize. They're going to think about it, and then they're going to apologize for thinking about it, and nothing happens. If I thought a sinister purpose, if I thought a civil war could be avoided, I'd recommend reaching out. I don't know. How about a civil pillow fight instead? That would be more civil. One politician said that the infant mortality rate wasn't that bad. You just have to not count. Yeah, it was. I will say this. It was. I think I was at the Better conference, which Jenna here helped organize, and was run by Tang, and it was a spectacular conference. It was a lot of fun. Somebody there had mentioned the infant mortality rate for blacks in this country, and I knew it was higher. I had no idea it was that high. I think they made the point of economic disparity and how it moves across the board, and how it affects everything. It's like, if ever there was an example, that was it. So, yeah, all right. Well, good. So, 4th of July, this country's birthday. We are divided. We're angry. You also never know. I remember a friend of mine had talked about an experience they had on a bus, and the bus driver had been mean to them and was one hell of an ass. I'd forgotten what it was. It suggested that Maybe the bus driver was just having a bad day. It's a fundamental attribution error, right? You know, when you accidentally cut somebody off in traffic, well, you did it because you're in a rush. You did it because, you know, you didn't see them. They were in your blind spot. I'm straight up legit. We all make those kinds of mistakes. But when somebody cuts you off, it's because they're an asshole. It's not because they were in a legit rush. It's not because they didn't see you. It's because they're an asshole. Each and every time, without fail. Something's wrong with the math there. I'm just saying, I'm not an expert, but something's wrong with the math there. And, you know, bus drivers have bad days too. And sure enough, my friend ended up seeing the same bus driver later, and the bus driver actually apologized and said, I remember you and I snapped at you and I didn't mean to. Well, that's not to say everybody's a good person by any stretch of the imagination. And Dr. King met plenty of people who, under no set of circumstances, would ever be turned around. And every now and then when I talk about trying to be as good a person as I can to others, because hatred is contagious, anger is contagious, and you infect others. The pathology of, It's the contagious nature of psychopathology. And, well, we got Porpoise in, so I'll let Porpoise in a sec. But the contagious nature of psychopathology, when somebody's mean to you, you sit there and you get all upset about it, and then you end up taking it out on other people. And it's cathartic. You feel better. But you've now infected them. It's just, it's passed on. It is a disease. It takes more energy to try to pass on being good. But the ramifications, the way it echoes, is absolutely amazing. And what I hear most often as a counterexample, oh, well, you've never seen a psychopath, and never mind. I've met more than my fair share, believe me. And followers of the show know how and why. Doesn't matter. That there are exceptions doesn't discount it. It doesn't disprove the axiom that you make the world a better place for what you put into it, at least if it's good. All right, so let's get Sinister in here. I'm not sure if I hooked up the audio. I think I did. We'll assume I did. Assuming I did something correctly is never the right thing, never the safe thing to do. Sinister, how are you? Oh, Sinister is waiting. Sinister will be there in a sec, so. All right, and I can certainly hear. All right, I'm gonna Sinister. I'm gonna mute you for a second. I'll when I see you back, I will unmute. But a beautiful shot of the Sinister's chair and her wall. So that's it. I don't know. These are the things I've been thinking about. You know what? I just figured impromptu stream and wanted to shoot the shit about it. So come on in and talk about it. Okay, Sinister's back. I'm going to unmute Sinister here. Sinister, you're back. How are you?
Hello. Hold on. Let me... All right, there we are. Now I don't have two competing voices in my ear.
All right.
And it's been... First of all, gas prices are on a downward trend for the last couple of weeks. I don't know how long that's going to continue. This would also be an excellent time if President Biden wanted to do it to actually try to improve the electronic car. Most cars are electronic now. Electric car infrastructure to improve the fueling stations and make sure they're more widely available, especially since a lot of the manufacturers are going over. But I think a lot of people just feel that divisions are too far apart and something's going to have to give at some point. I think it's too late. I hope I'm wrong, for people to try to reach out across the aisle. I don't think we can do that anymore. I think we're at the point where we were in the 1850s, where all the great compromisers had died and just slavery needed to be solved and war was inevitable. This case is not slavery, it's something else, but I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. I don't think, if you are, I don't see a way. I don't see a way. I don't think. It's almost what is it, a gaps argument? Just because I don't see a way doesn't mean there isn't, which is why I appreciated the way Macmillan put it last night, or the night before, I think, which was, I don't see an off ramp. It doesn't mean there isn't one, but I can't. Let me. I think just to cut down on bandwidth there, I wasn't sending you the show, but let's get it so you can see see what we're streaming there. Yeah, right. So, excuse me. At any rate, I don't see an off ramp, and to tell you the truth, I mean, I look at the numbers. I know that, and I was going to say this derogatory. I was going to be snarky about it, and I'm like, okay, here I am trying to talk about at least improving the tone, and even if a civil war is completely inevitable, doesn't mean improving the tone is not worthwhile. But you take a look at the numbers, how many states, so every state pays federal taxes, and the money that you give to the federal government, they distribute back into the system in one way or another. Massachusetts gets back 70 cents for every dollar that we give the federal government. For every dollar we give the federal government, they give us 70 cents back to help us with infrastructure, whatever. That's a 30% loss. Where does that money go? That money goes to Texas and other states where for every dollar they spend, they get $1.30 or more back. And they get this to help with their infrastructure. And Texas still ranks, 43rd to 47th, somewhere in there for education, despite how much money they're getting. And, my state ranks in the top 1 to 3 from any year to year, and we're losing 30 cents on the dollar. So aside from being proud of that, I'm mildly curious how, other than wish thinking, because if you take a look at all 50 states, and you take a look at education, you look at what they can produce, you take a look at their economy. And the one thing I've noticed, unless somebody has data that they'd like to, I could be wrong, I haven't looked at the numbers in a little while, but they don't change that quickly. You'll notice a trend of a greatly disproportionate number of red states on the bottom of all of those indicators and blue states on the top. They can go do what they want to do. I don't know.
Yeah, but even the red states, you'll find some things that surprise you. There might be something they're doing well that you might not expect them to be doing. Like Indiana recently passed a law that allows, and the cat's doing something, that allows any adult to go back and at least get a technical certificate for free. Indiana probably isn't the highest in education, but it does education for adults fairly well. And we have a program called 21st Century Scholar, which lets people of the right age to go back to college and get a stipend while they're going to college. Now, I'm sure Indiana probably is not high on the list of states on education rankings, but let me check. I might be wrong about that. But I think if you look around, you may be surprised.
And no, Athena is not getting her own camera. We're not putting Athena up separately.
Athena is busy.
My cat's name is Athena.
Let's check education rankings by state. And that doesn't mean Indiana hasn't gone a couple days without being a national embarrassment recently.
Well, Florida, Texas, and I don't know.
Looks like Massachusetts.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, go ahead. Massachusetts is number 2. Utah is number 10, surprisingly. New Jersey is number 1. Huh.
Oh, what do you know? That was a little bit of a shock.
Indiana is number 22. Texas, according to this list, is...
Yeah, what's Texas?
34.
That's an improvement. Last I saw it was 43. Are you dyslexic by any chance? Did we?
Well, I'm trying to get the date on this list.
So, Mouty made a comment once a while back, and I thought this was worth noting, that you only have one gas tank. And what I think he meant by that was if you have a bad day, all your energy reserves draw from the same place, whatever you're spending them on. So you only have one gas tank, and once that's depleted, you don't have the spoons, the gas, whatever analogy you want to use to deal with anybody or anything else, regardless of whether or not they had anything to do with the draining of the tank. You've only got one tank, and it's not that Twitter isn't actually, that I've seen in Twitter is not more toxic. It is actually not more toxic than it has been prior, but it is much more angry. It's not toxicity in terms of the tone or the genuinely trying to make people look bad or the toxic nature of it, but it's a lot more hostile and angry, and that's an interesting change. And I think,
I don't think it's that new. Plus, we have the company deliberately trying to encourage that. I don't think we can overlook the role of social media and these tech giants in how things have gotten to this point. They're not interested in trying to moderate things. They're interested in trying to get people to argue with each other because that makes them more money.
Good point. So, I don't know. I had said earlier in the show that I think one of the biggest faults, the original sin of the Constitution, was a winner-take-all presidency. What do you think is if you had to sit there and say what has gotten us to here, and as a single point that you had to name, what would you name?
I don't think I could do that because it's a complex variety of factors. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way the media has exploited. I think, and if Sandrine were here, I'm sure he'd disagree, but it's unrestrained capitalism. Specifically as it applies to the media.
That is a definite problem, and it really is. You have to admit that the New York Times is a liberal paper, unabashedly liberal, but they also are accurate. And there's a slant, and sometimes they see things and we've pointed out errors that they've made, but they're one of the more accurate news sources out there, left or right. And it's just amazing to see people sit there and say, oh, well, it's a liberal newspaper, so you can't believe a word they say. Like, oh, dear Lord.
Well, first of all, the New York Times has a higher accuracy rating than most papers. And secondly, most of the conservative media doesn't have a good accuracy rating. If you're looking for good conservative sources, the only one I can think of is the Wall Street Journal.
That's the only one I can think of right now, too. Fox is highly accurate if you're only talking about what they are sharing from Associated Press. So you go onto the Fox News, website, and you'll see all the articles from Associated Press that they've just pulled, and it's just sort of like, okay, there you go. Those are always well done, but it's like their most accurate content comes from other people. Yeah, Mouty is not. I'm tempted to. I sent Mouty a message on Discord, and he's not usually on Discord. I could hit him up on his phone, but he may be asleep, and I don't want to trouble him. So he may also be awake. Who knows? But I'm not going to, Mouty would be ideal for this. But yes, Porpoise, sorry.
Just let him know he's right.
Let Mouty know he's right?
I don't know. Let him know he's right.
Okay, I'll do that. First time for everything. Don't anyone tell him I said that. He's going to kick my ass.
There is a petition to impeach Clarence Thomas that has gotten over 1 million signatures on MoveOn.org.
Really? I'm a big fan of Move On. Every time anyone mentions Move On, gave me my very first real positive review. They did a great review of The Water Thief, and it was spectacular. It was one of the real high ups at Move On. So I was like, I love Move On. I love you, Move On. Thank you for giving me a great review of my book. Anyways, and most people shocked to know they're still around. So there's a petition to, I think that's going to be before the end of the year. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the reason for this is clearer than it would be for the other justices, because refusing to recuse yourself from an investigation your wife in is a major ethical violation for a lawyer or a judge.
Keep in mind, he was the sole dissent in the Eastman case. He was the sole dissent, and it turned out now he was the sole dissent in a decision that was trying to block the release of documents which implicate his wife in a criminal conspiracy. She's been implicated in a criminal conspiracy in the Eastman information, and the only person who tried to block the release of that was Thomas. I think there's a kind of an argument to be made. Well, he didn't know that she was in it because he didn't see it. Maybe she didn't tell him, hey, hon, by the way, I talked to this guy, but he must have known. He must have known. She must have mentioned his name. She worked with him on this, and there's no way he couldn't have known. And Thomas, it's amazing the shit he does not recuse himself from. That's the other thing. The liberal justices recuse themselves at the drop of a hat. If there's anything that even whiffs of what is it, a conflict of interest, they drop it. Kagan, all of them. Thomas, the number of times that people said he should recuse himself, is no, I can be impartial. Nobody can be impartial. You can't be impartial under any set of circumstances. And it's just the only reason you recuse yourself on situations like this is because it just happens to be so much worse. But this idea of perfect impartiality, oh dear Lord. Yes, I remember Anita Hill.
Yes, I remember that too. And it's not that he lied under the congressional hearings where he was confirmed, because there are other justices they could get on that. It's like, this is actually a very serious thing not to be doing, and this petition got there before. I think it got up to 1 million after the whole Roe versus Wade thing. But just remember, people, a lot of people are on edge right now because, especially the LGBT folk, because they know they're next. Trans people have been under the gun the entire year because, one, they've lost the whole gay marriage thing a while ago, and trans people aren't even that popular among certain segments of the LGBT community, and sadly, there are conservative groups that are willing to drive this wedge. Gorsuch and well, I don't think Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett have the same level of problems that Thomas does.
Yeah, they don't have the exposure, definitely. But, frankly, I think Roberts wants to get control of the court back, and he damn well better, because he's going to come down as being one of the more ineffective chief justices. He did not vote on this, and at first I thought that was because he was being a coward. I don't think it's because he was being a coward. I think it was because he believes in an incremental solution, and this was not that. He didn't want to vote against it because he did believe in the notion that this had not been properly argued, and his values suggested, well, that's interesting.
No, okay. Clarence Thomas will keep his marriage legal. He's not going to vote against his own interests.
Hey, listen, I'm of the opinion that he wants to get a divorce, but he's afraid she's going to murder him, so he's going to overturn this. He's going to go, hon, there's nothing I could do. It came before the Supreme Court. I think this is just his way of getting a divorce. That's what I think. It should be next, Sweet. I mean, the reality is, there is zero difference between the argument that allows him to get married to a white woman and the argument that lets two gay men or two, gay women marry or trans. There's no difference in the argument. There isn't any. So the fact that he says all these should be back on the table and then he drops that one, it's the gall. I think it was McMillan who said he's throwing down the gauntlet. He's like, I'm going to do something that is the most hypocritical thing that we have seen on the court probably in 100 fucking years, and is daring anybody to do anything about it. Between that and not recusing himself on Eastman, that man has. That's one of the most arrogant so-called public servants in It's the most right now. He's the most in recent history that I can think of, most arrogant, and he's just like he's daring people to just call him out on it. And we'll see what happens. I don't. The only thing is Roberts is not a strong man. Oh Jesus, is that you or?
That was my watch.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Titan is promoting something. And on Discord. I should probably uninstall that app from my phone.
So the what was I going to say? Oh yeah, well, Thomas is an ass, the likes of which we haven't seen, and usually people like that, more often than not always, certainly they get away with it. They do sometimes get away with it, but more often than not, they get their asses handed to them, and I think that's what's going to happen to him. He's in too much. Yeah. He's got too much exposure on way too many levels. But the problem is, Roberts wants whatever Supreme Court Chief Justice wants, which is to make a name for themselves, because he's aware that he's the one shepherding the court. Well, they're doing whatever the fuck they want, and he's been clear about incrementalism. He wants to make changes slowly, and I think he's got a very good reason why. And Alito and Thomas are like, yeah, fuck you, we're doing what we want. And whether or not he has the strength, I have no doubt that in a perfect world he would want to see Thomas gone, and for the various shit things he's pulled, including releasing that concurrent opinion, because that concurrent opinion was. I'm sorry, that was designed to incite violence. That was designed to incite violence. Everything that he put on there, he put more things that he thought that more cornerstones of established precedent on there than in any concurrent opinion I have ever seen. He put on there up for grabs, and he didn't have to. He just decided, I'm going to do a concurrent opinion and pour the gas on this. Roberts has to be pissed about that. He has to be pissed about the so doing the concurrent opinion, the conflict of interest that nobody knew about until the Eastman stuff got released, and the fact that Thomas was the sole dissent looks really bad. It looks bad. And then you've got that I think Ginny Thomas is the one who released the original Alito draft, and that devastated the internal machinations of the court. That changed. That's never happened in a Supreme Court term before, and it happened on Roberts' watch, and it probably happened from Thomas's wife. That's something. Titan pointed this out, which I think is interesting, which is they investigated, but they never released who did it. Did they find who did it? Well, I think they'd have to have figured out by now whether or not they can prove it. But they dropped it. Well, it may be because they didn't figure it out. It may also be because they figured out it was the wife of a Chief Justice, and they decided not to throw her under the bus, which would be hypocritical as fucking hell, because if it had been a clerk, we'd all know. You looked like you were going to say something, so I wanted to. I've been ranting, so.
Well, I just want to caution people against not doing anything, which some people are just like saying, oh, we can't do anything, the powers won't change anything. Yeah, they might not change anything. Like, I doubt the Move On petition is going to result in impeachment, especially if it gets delivered after November, because although it's not going to be easy, I still think the Republicans have this election just because the economy is not doing well.
The economy is the best indicator, yeah.
But the problem is the Supreme Court has made so many just bad decisions that it's riled a lot of people up, and what should have been an easy decision is now throwing a lot of things into question. So keep the pressure on them. Do not let them think that they should get comfortable. I hate to say this, but keep protesting outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes. Just don't get violent. They made their own bed with that one because they let people protest outside of abortion protesters' homes. I don't believe they should be free from the consequences of their actions.
That's a good point. And they were also, by the way, perfectly happy with protesting outside, the Westboro Baptist Church. You know, if Westboro gets to protest the funeral of a gay soldier, And I get to tell the father of that soldier, God hated your son. And I'm glad he's dead because he's burning in hell with his skin being, burnt off time and then regrowing, burnt off, regrowing. And that's what's happening to your son right now. Sleep tight. You get to do that at the funeral of a soldier. Yeah, I'm not sure how much SCOTUS gets to sit there and say, well, you can't be protesting outside our house. So that's a really good point. I'm going to use that one. Thank you, Porpoise. That's a really good fucking point. Oh.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did it. They did it. They're the ones who, they set that precedent. That's a really good point.
I mean, yeah, maybe Congress can provide protection, but people have the right. They've they've set their own table. Can you keep your tail?
Oh, Kitty. I've got two, Athena and Ennio. They were Father's Day presents from my kids. And I think I got them at a particularly stressful time, so I wasn't able to really, I didn't have the spoons to spend time with them, and they actually imprinted on my daughter, so they chase her around all day. They're completely imprinted. It's really hilarious. She's their mom. Yeah. Dear Lord. All right. Well, I don't know if anyone has any other comments or questions that they want to ask, put it up. I don't know, Porpoise, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we start to wrap this up?
Just keep the pressure up. Do not skip the ballot box. And unfortunately, you're either going to have, if we can fight now, maybe it won't get that bad, but. And also, conservatives, if you really want to complain about it, don't you just hate activist judges? I mean, just use the line you've used against.
Well, and I understand the argument that they're not activists, they're returning back to the original Constitution, but the reality is this is a precedent-based system, it's common law, and they have decided they don't like the precedents, and they're overturning decades of established precedent. That's an activist judge. An activist judge isn't just what you say it is. This is absolutely activism. And just because it's returning back to the quote, the original intent of the slaveholding founding fathers, just because it's doing that does not mean it isn't activism. They're overturning established precedent. Which, by the way, they know they shouldn't be doing because that's why Kavanaugh lied and said, I wouldn't do that because it's the precedent and we need consistency. Two of the justices that signed off on this said consistency is the most important thing and you make slow changes. You don't upend society overnight. I think they lied.
Yes, but that doesn't matter if you're Catholic and have deeply held religious beliefs. Because obviously, religious beliefs take precedence over the Constitution and separation of church and state. Also, if you're a conservative, follow me for more comedy tips. Because you need it.
Yep, definitely. Oh, dear Lord. Well, why don't you tell people where they can find you? We'll see. I'm gonna see if I can get your link.
I do have a YouTube channel. It's The Sinister Porpoise, youtube.com/The Sinister Porpoise 1. Right now, I'm not really all that active because going back to college, working, having a cat in my lap, I don't have a lot of time. Usually it's on tech topics, or has been. Although I could go back and just do the drama and get more views, but why?
Well, the drama can certainly be entertaining, but it's I'm not sure what it does, and it gets pretty exhausting after a while too. So I got the link here, and that actually does remind me. I do have one other thing if we want to talk about this. So I just dropped the Sinister Porpoise's channel right there. I did want to quickly bring up one other thing. So it's and where did this go anyway?
Lambda?
What was it? And I literally just had, so the Supreme Court has decided to hear, which one? It's the election law one that says that because the Constitution says that elections are organized by or overseen by the legislatures of those states, that actually, because it doesn't say that the court has oversight of those, that even the state courts cannot oversee it, and the legislators can do whatever they want. If they want to say, well, we're only going to have one district that, we're going to have 99% of the state in one district, and all the rest of the state in the other district, and that state's going to have 99% of the votes or electoral college results, and that state is conservative, what I'm saying, the gerrymandering, that's, if they decide to do that, there is no way to overturn it. There is no way to, there's no appeal. You can't appeal that to the state or federal government, is the claim that's being made now. The Supreme Court has decided to hear that. It's on Article 1 of the Constitution. The times, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Now, in my view, you'd still have oversight. The Founding Fathers always wanted oversight. And, you see, okay, so you're getting, may I ask, what device are you using to connect? You said your phone?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm using my PC.
You're using your PC, okay, because I'm getting this sound that the only other time I've ever had it is with Xandring. It happens whether he's muted or not. Now I'm having it with you, and the audience can hear it. As soon as you talk,
is it a slight
the sound it's a clacking sound. And what's funny is
it might be the chair.
No, it's not. It's not. This is something it's a software issue of some kind. I'm just trying to identify where it's coming from, what's causing it.
I might need a new cable.
It's not. It happens with Xandring too. You and Xandring are the only two that have ever had it. He doesn't have a cable. It connects on his phone. At any rate, I'm going to have to troubleshoot it. I don't know. This is the first time I've had somebody else have it. Xandring never had it until he switched to the iPhone. And it's really bizarre, and it only happens when they're not talking. As soon as you or Xandring talk, the sound stops. Even if he's muted, that sound comes through. Timestamp it, you can hear it. It's weird. Anyways, I have no idea. I'm going to try not to talk because you and I will end up sitting here fucking troubleshooting the thing, because this is where the computer geeks we're going to sit. It's a really bizarre problem. I know I've seen stranger ones, but it's the kind of one that's really going to get my attention when I start to think about it. At any rate, so what we've got here is what is now coming before the Supreme Court is the argument that because the Constitution says it's determined by the legislature, and it doesn't say that it can be appealed, there is in fact no way to appeal this. The legislature can do whatever they want. If you don't like it, just vote for somebody else. Which strikes me as a reasonably conservative opinion. I'm not convinced that this court, as cray-cray as they are, would actually agree with that, in particular because it strips them of some of their power, because this would mean even they can't. They would be arguing that they can't see any appeals on anything, and the state legislature can do whatever it wants because that's what the Constitution says in regards to how votes are held. Do you have any thoughts as to how they're going to vote on that?
Let me unmute. What are you doing, Athena? I think a lot of those noises may be feline related. But let me unmute my mic because it might have been a hardware issue, and a hardware mute should fix it.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think a lot of gerrymandering has been a common thing throughout U.S. history. And it's a problem because right now, the way it was set up, we didn't want the cities to have too much power because we realized that have more people living in cities, even in a more rural society, than would live in the outliers. But now we're getting to the point where maybe we're giving too much power to the rural areas, and maybe Wyoming shouldn't have its citizens have 3 times the weight as like someone from New York. Maybe lower that weight. But we're not going to get that because it keeps the Republicans in power. And, if you've read the second half of the Communist Manifesto, You know, one of the reasons communism doesn't work is because Marx thought people would give up power on their own. And we basically need... But as far as the Supreme Court goes, I don't know what they're going to do. I think they'll uphold the gerrymandering because a lot of them see themselves as Republican despite being supposedly non-political. I just don't know. It's just... I suspect they'll make the gerrymandering problem worse and just try to codify it so it stays in Republican hands.
Yeah, that would be, it's hard to imagine how we could keep our right to vote if you even cede to the states the ability to legislate our votes out of existence without the ability to contest it and without any kind of higher appeal. That strikes me as the antithesis of the Constitution. And but if they're going to sit there and say, well, you know, it's not that which isn't, you know, it seems to me it's not that far a cry from the arguments that they've already been using. The Constitution does not grant the courts the power to, it says the oversight is held by the legislature. Now, if, and that's what they said with the Border Patrol agents, right? The Border Patrol agents, well, since there's no prescribed, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you're allowed to sue them, you can't sue them. It's, excuse me? So if they violate your rights, you don't have the right to an appeal. Or sorry, no, a right to sue them for it. It's insane.
As much as I hate to disagree with Sandrine on this, the originalist reasoning is some of the dumbest thing to ever come across. Because first of all, one of the things that's not as in the Constitution is a defined role for the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court itself decided that they would say whether or not laws are constitutional in an early case. So if they're going to be originalists to the Constitution, they don't have the power to decide whether or not laws are constitutional. Secondly, there's a process specifically intended to amend the Constitution. If they intended it to be interpreted exactly as written always, that wouldn't be there.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with. I agree that they believed that it should be able to be changed. That doesn't mean that they didn't have a specific way they wanted it interpreted, at least as a starting framework. But I will say I've been thinking more and more about this. You know, I don't know. I think it comes down to what do you really mean when you say the rule of law? And I hate to sit there and try to equivocate on that, but it's really just like the Bible, right? The Bible contradicts itself left and right. So you can cherry pick and choose what it said, what parts of what it says and how it's interpreted so that you can say anything you want to. And that's why you've got, what was it, 3,000 mutually excommunicative sects of Christianity. But I think it's the same thing with the Bible. It depends on, not the Bible, sorry, with the Constitution. It depends on what rights, non-enumerated rights, you really really think matter and are essential, or how much are you just going to sit there and with the strictest, most narrow interpretation of what it says. And I don't think that I understand that the more narrow and more strict, the easier it is to say, okay, at least we have a set of codified laws that everybody understands and can adhere to, but that's not necessarily justice. Justice is not that simple, and it never has been, and they knew that. That's why they wrote it the way they did, but no, dear Lord. All right, the cough is starting to get worse, so I'm probably going to start to wrap it up, but yeah, what were we going to say?
It's clear they did not intend the judge, or it's clear they did not intend the, it's clear they had no defined role for the Supreme Court initially if you read the Constitution. And one of the things they're proudest of back when they wrote it, especially the Federalist, is something that doesn't matter anymore today, and it's Article 10, Section 1, which has to do with printing the money. I mean, it's still in there. How many of us really care that the U.S. doesn't give out titles to people, because that's also in there? I mean, yeah, I really would like to be a knight, but...
I know, right? Well... tell you the truth, I was thinking about becoming a British citizen long before this. had nothing to do with me being terrified of, MAGA, people coming after me with a pitchfork or, but really it was just because I was like, is there a possibility if I become a British citizen, is there at least a remote outside possibility I could become a knight? I think that's pretty badass. So I was just like, yeah, the Sir Nicholas from now on. All right. Well, what's the stream? Yeah, this is just an impromptu stream. I think I think a lot of people. I've noticed my friends stressing out. I've noticed acquaintances. I've noticed tweeps? People I know on Twitter, but I don't know outside of Twitter. They're not friends or acquaintances. They're tweeps. Everybody freaking out. We decided we'd chat. Don't know if I made things better or worse. I opined for the first 45 minutes. But, yeah, that's where we are. And then Native Atheist, thanks for the late stream. I'd like to try... So we have had a hard time settling on a specific date and time for After Dark. Normally Tuesdays in time, Wednesdays overtime. After Dark, we've been doing Thursdays, but I'd like to move it to Saturdays. Problem? I have a family. I don't necessarily get a lot of time with them, and Saturdays does cut into that time. Doesn't necessarily cut in a whole heck of a lot because it's a weekend, but the girls still have to be in bed by a certain time. So we're trying to see if we can move After Dark to starting no sooner than 10 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. So that's what we're looking into, but certainly the weekend streams a bit more if we can. So, you going to join us, Porpoise, if we're doing Saturdays at 10 p.m.? Oh, you're muted.
Maybe, depending on what the topic is. And Jordan Peterson, just delete that tweet. Honestly, if you're all the big and personal responsibility, you broke the rules of the platform. They let you know. If you just want to, let people know the right thing, you just do what they're asking you to do.
Yeah, I was surprised when I did a deep dive on Jordan Peterson. I was surprised. He was far more cogent and intelligent than I thought he was, but or at least than I would have expected based on what I'd heard from him. But everything I've been, I did research up until a sort of I don't know. I guess he was in Russia for a while in a coma. I don't know if any of that's true or not. But one of the things. Okay, so I actually talked with GM Skeptic about this. A genetically modified skeptic and I were chatting at the Better conference, and he had said that he echoed the sentiment. He said, "Yeah, Jordan Peters," and I had made a claim in the previous show that do not ignore him. You ignore him at your peril. Now that may not be true, but based on the material I had at the time, I was like, ignore him at your peril because either he's spitting truth, in which case, go him and you should pay attention. Or he's saying some really dangerous stuff and you need to pay attention. So either way, you should be paying attention to him. But I was profoundly offended by that image he put up from the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. And he said, sorry, not pretty or not beautiful. And that was shocking and genuinely offensive. And I'm sitting there going, who the hell does he think he is that he gets to say what's beautiful or not? And then a couple of the other crazy things he's done very recently. I'd be concerned about his mental health. He seems to be, but with Page, that tweet, and then getting into it with Twitter, he's sounding a bit more like Trump than he is.
Only on this channel, where we accept all forms of solipsism as true.
Yes, we are not solipsophobic. Solipsophobia. I'll have to work on the etymology of that word, but we do not permit solipphobia on this channel. We take it very seriously. Well, at least I take it seriously, which means we take it seriously. I was in somebody else's stream, and they mentioned they were talking about the theory of self, and I said I had written a book on theory of self, but I'm a solipsist, so what I really said was theory of everybody else. All right. Well, so I think we're gonna. I think we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Porpoise, for coming on. It's good to see you as always. And yeah, I think no, there's nobody else in the room there, so we're gonna close that out. Any final thoughts? Anything that you wanted to say? You've got a captive audience. Any final thoughts on the state of? And I think you had said this. You had said this earlier. I think that's true, which is, that this doesn't seem avoidable. And you had said something else, but my brain is so. Any final thoughts on what we're looking at as a country?
Well, I think maybe we can avoid. Well, I don't know. Commander McMillan would know here more than I would. And all I'm just seeing is on Twitter. And problem is, we are all kind of in our own filter bubbles with the information we have, even if Twitter and Facebook and the other companies are making it worse. It's like, one thing I try to do is listen to talk radio so I can get the one opinion all conservatives seem to have. And I know they don't like that, but you're really spouting the same talking points. So I don't need you coming at me on Twitter telling me what all of you think. I only need to listen to one of you.
That's why I watch Fox News sometimes. It's surprising. It's very surprising. All right. Well, sorry, did I cut you off? No, I'm sorry. I
do what you can to prevent things from going worse. Do not let DeSantis or Trump get anywhere near the Oval Office, because the Republicans can go back to sanity, but they have to reject these people. The problem is Trump won, and I don't think a lot of the Republican leaders are comfortable with them. All right, I have not been perfect lately. I've been blocking people left and right on Twitter lately because I just can't deal with it anymore, including some Christian today who was trying to misrepresent some Swedish study, and they never read the part. But anyway, regardless of what's going on right now, be excellent to each other, and so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Well, and let's remember, I had a policy of not blocking anyone on Twitter for a very long time, or blocking the minimum number of people, and I think my Twitter feed, I still only have, 7 total people blocked. But it's there for a reason, and manage your spoons, because some of these people really can have an impact on you. It's no use denying it, and better to save your energies for where they're needed, not for trolls on Twitter. But all right, well, thank you so much, Porpoise, for coming on. It was good to see you. It was nice to see Jenna, Humanist Swede, Doorknob Head, everyone who's come in. Thank you all. Thank you to Titan, who actually suggested this, and I was just like, you know what? Good call. So thank you for the suggestion, Titan. If anyone was pleased that we streamed impromptu, thank Titan. If you're displeased, then blame him too. So we'll yeah, that's the way I roll. All right, thank you all for joining us, and we have a couple of different things scheduled coming up. A lot of it's going to be pre-recorded. I think we're also going to split up. I'm making a separate cut of just the second half of McMillan's show earlier in the week, because it really was 2 shows, and the second half was a very different topic, and one that I think needs to be done on its own. So we'll do that, and I will see you guys all later in the week. Night all.